Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and Michael Myers. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at Halloween, the Curse of Michael Myers. The sixth installment takes place 6 years after Halloween 5 and adds a whole bunch of new shit to the mix. Jamie Lloyd has been held prisoner all this time, but after giving birth to a son, she manages to briefly escape Michael and the mysterious cult of Thorn. Her son is found by a grown-up Tommy Doyle who, with the help of Loomis, tries to save a gaggle of new Strode family members who live in the Myers house. There's a lot more going on, but we'll get to all of it. After the piss-poor response to Halloween 5, Mustafa Akkad put the series on hold to reevaluate its potential. This is mostly due to the strange additions to the series like the Man in Black, which left everyone confused about where to take the story next. A bunch of writers came and went, including Phil Rosenberg, Quentin Tarantino, and John Carpenter himself. Akkad hated all of their scripts, but eventually landed on one he liked, written by screenwriter Daniel Farrens, who'd go on to write The Tooth Fairy, The Girl Next Door, and The Haunting of Sharon Tate. He wanted to bridge 4 and 5 to the rest of the series, and that meant expanding and exploring the Man in Black and the Thorn symbol. Eventually, he realized that the makers of Halloween 5 literally made that shit up on the spot, so he researched the whole Halloween franchise and occult symbols and wrote a script that attempted to tie everything together. Curse was directed by Joe Chappelle, who's mostly known for his work on TV. This was only his second time directing, but he'd go on to direct episodes of The Wire, CSI Miami, and Godfather of Harlem. Donald Pleasance returned to play Dr. Loomis in what would sadly be his final role. Danielle Harris was contacted to reprise her role as Jamie, but apparently Dimension Studios offered her a ridiculously low salary, so she left the project. New Jamie is played by J.C. Brandy from Strong Medicine and Silk Stockings. Kara Strode is played by Marianne Hagen from Stakeland and Breadcrumbs. It sounds like she had a pretty shitty time on set though, as the Weinsteins didn't like her, referring to her as too thin and pointy-chinned. Fuck the Weinsteins. Tommy Doyle is played by Paul fucking Rudd from Anchorman, Knocked Up, and of course the MCU in one of his earliest film roles. Dr. Terrence Wynn is played by Mitch Ryan from Dark Shadows, Dharma and Greg, and Lethal Weapon. And finally, the role of Michael was reprised by stuntman George Wilbur, who played Myers in Part 4. Filming was hectic to say the least, with Chappelle and producer Paul Freeman rewriting scenes the day of filming. Freeman actually took so much control over the project he'd send the film crew home when he felt he was more capable. Adding to the difficulty was that the film's distribution rights were sold to Dimension Films, owned by the Weinsteins. Tension grew between them and Mustafa Akkad's company Nightfall Productions, as well as Freeman and Farrens, who all constantly fought for their different visions of the film. This beef came to a head when the movie was shown to test audiences and received negative reviews. Dimension stepped in and took control, making the film flashier, gorier, and giving it an entirely new ending. A big legal battle ensued between Dimension and Nightfall, with Dimension ultimately winning and having their version officiated as the theatrical film. This version, which is referred to as the theatrical cut, is what I'll be covering today, as it's what you narrowly voted for in a poll. The original version, which is preferred by Mustafa and Malik Akkad, is generally referred to as the producer's cut, and it is also available for Halloween fans to watch. In a perfect world, I'd cover both, but in short, the producer's cut has less gore, more Loomis, and a lot more cult stuff. I'll try to cover it next Halloween, but no promises. The theatrical cut changes simple things like the color grading all the way to Mike's actor, with Michael Lerner replacing George Wilbur in the reshot finale as he was less bulky. A ton of flashy transitions and crappy 90s rock music were also added, so look forward to that. Audiences did, and were quite disappointed. Critics found Curse to be boring, convoluted, and lacking any plot, and most deemed it the worst of the franchise so far. It currently has a 9 and 37% on Rotten Tomatoes, so aside from Halloween 3's audience score, it is the lowest of the low so far. Y'all know I wasn't too fond of Part 5, so I have a feeling I'm not going to be too happy here either. It's been a long time since I've watched The Curse of Michael Myers, so I guess it's time to rip off the band-aid and begin. I hope y'all brought some crotchless panties, cause we're watching Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. The movie opens with an absurd flash of shit we're gonna see later, and a screaming, now 15-year-old Jamie Lloyd is wheeled through a pipey hallway into an underground lair. Jamie gives a sweaty, painful birth through some bizarre slow-motion dissolves, and eventually pops the little guy out. Jamie begs to see her son, but the man in black swiftly takes him away. While Tommy Doyle narrates that Michael's goal is to kill his entire bloodline, he and Jamie disappeared after Part 5 and he suspects someone is trying to harness his evil. Jamie's son has the curse symbol painted on him in blood during some kind of ceremony. This random cult midwife has second thoughts, I guess, and offers to help Jamie and her baby escape. She leads them through these stupid undefined hallways, but then turns back when they reach the exit. Nurse Lady fucked up, and Michael emerges from the darkness and lifts her up. There just happens to be a wall spike for no good reason, and Michael pins her up. Jamie ascends through a foggy dumpster, and Mike ain't far behind. Jamie hops in a pickup truck whose owner is just standing in the rain, I guess, and he quickly has his head nearly torn off by Michael. Jamie drives the fuck out of there, and we hop over to the Myers house where Danny Strode has nightmares in which the man in black asks him to kill. He calls out for his mom Kara, who comforts him and assumes this is just the usual kid afraid of the dark kind of situation. She looks over the symbol Danny drew, and through the radio we learn Haddonfield has banned Halloween celebration since 1989. Half-naked Kara looks out the window to find her neighbor, Tommy Doyle, watching her through a camera. What the fuck, Tommy? Now he's on a call with the radio show hosted by a guy named Barry Sims, and he retells his experience with Michael. Tommy believes Michael will return, and he says he is ready for him. Damn, even Loomis is listening to these Michael conspiracy theorists who think Michael joined the CIA or was launched into space. They also think old Loomy is dead. He gets a knock on the door, and it's his old colleague Dr. Terrence Wynn. He was the guy in charge of Smith's Grove way back in the original. Back to Jamie, who reaches a bus station. Of course it's completely empty though, and the radio playing overhead tells us the local community college students are throwing a Halloween party to retake their freedom on the holiday. The emergency service lines are busy, so Jamie calls up Barry Sims after he announces his call number. Wynn is retiring and wants Loomis to take his place as if he's in any better condition to do the job. Loomis refuses, and they overhear Jamie on the radio, who calls for Dr. Loomis by name before Barry cuts her off. Jamie heads to the restroom to clean up her bloody baby, but the power cuts out and Mikey arrives. She hides in a stall as Michael searches for them, but looks like she's skedaddled. Jamie is back on the road, but Michael catches up with some wheels of his own. He rams her into some farmland and she crashes into a pumpkin patch. She stumbles into the barn trying to avoid Michael, but the shape catches up and slams his niece down onto a corn thresher, mortally piercing her torso. Jamie reaches out to her uncle, but he just slams her further down, nearly cutting her in half. She tells him he can't have the baby, and Michael puts Jamie down for good by turning on the thresher, which must rip her insides apart. Well, that's fucking depressing. Michael returns to the truck only to realize he's been bamboozled. It's Halloween and time to meet the whole Strode family, starting with angry-ass Daddy John, who is pissed about all this Michael Myers hullabaloo. He is Laurie's adopted dad's brother, so that makes him Laurie's adoptive uncle and Jamie's adoptive great-uncle, I believe. We also have John's wife Deborah, their daughter Kara, her son Danny, and Kara's brother Tim. John comes in complaining about youths ruining the country, and the moment Kara denotes an ounce of displeasure with her current housing, he lays in on her. He harasses poor Deborah as well and blames Kara and her bastard son for all of their problems. She calls him a bastard and gets a nasty slap for it. That's when John realizes he's got a knife pointed at him via his little bastard grandson. That a boy, Dan. We also meet Tim's girlfriend Beth, who is the one organizing the big Halloween festival thing. She lives across the street in the same boarding house as Tommy Doyle, who she describes as disturbed but harmless. Tommy is hunkered down at the moment, replaying the audio of Jamie calling for help when he overhears the station's PA system. He bebops over to the station and follows a very noticeable trail of blood to the bathroom where he finds a very noticeable crying baby inside a locker. Congrats, Tommy, you're a father now. Meanwhile, Loomis is at Smith's Grove with Wynn for some reason, where they learn Jamie's body has been discovered. They arrive at the scene where that stupid symbol has been burnt into some hay bales. Kara, Tim, and Beth arrive at the college, which is prepping for the arrival of Barry Sims, when Beth notices a fucked up drawing Danny made. Tommy shows up at the hospital and starts screaming to see a doctor when he randomly runs into Loomis, who is just here for no discernible reason. Tommy reminds him of who he is, and they immediately start discussing Michael's return. Loomis thinks Mike will stop since all of his bloodline is dead, but Tommy introduces Loomy to little baby Lloyd. He also explains that Strode relatives occupy the Myers house and he fears they may be in danger. Security comes looking for Tommy and they plan to meet at the college party tonight. Looks like Tommy was right as Michael is watching poor, abused Deborah. The washing machine decides to be a jerk and Deb is carrying the laundry up when she hears suspicious floor creaking. It's just Loomis though, and he tells her all about Michael's evil, contaminated soul. He warns that Michael will return and she and her family should get out while they can. Somehow Deborah doesn't know the house's history, which doesn't make much sense to me. Meanwhile, Tommy brings the baby to his bachelor pad and decides to name him Stephen for no reason. Danny is walking home when he notices the man in black, but Tommy accidentally intrudes. Deborah calls angry-ass John, who completely dismisses her even as Michael stands right behind her. She plans to take the kids to a hotel, but I think we know that's not gonna happen. Oh fuck, having such a nice wife is so difficult, I better day drink to wind down. Deborah notices an axe isn't where it should be and answers the phone to the man in black, who simply says, "We want the child," and hangs up. She turns to see Michael and runs outside where she is slowed down by her own laundry. She retrieves her glasses and crawls through the maze, but pulls back a sheet to find Michael, who chops down one of the few sympathetic characters in the Thorn trilogy. Kara arrives home to find the front door locked, and when she comes around back, all evidence of her mother's murder is gone. She has a good long mom search, but only finds Danny and his new creepy friend. Kara is obviously concerned with this weird shit, but I guess hears Tommy out enough to join him at his boarding house? He wants her to watch the house from his all-seeing window, but of course only Danny sees Mike right outside. I hope y'all are ready for a serious exposition dump. Tommy explains the history of runes and their use in pagan rituals. The symbol that keeps popping up is Thorn, which represents a demon that seeks death and suffering. According to legend, children would be chosen by the Thorn demon to kill their families as sacrifices on the night of Samhain, aka Halloween. Tommy believes Michael was afflicted with the curse. Also, the Thorn symbol was derived from a constellation that forms every so often, and apparently each of its recent appearances align with Michael returning to kill. He believes whoever is controlling Michael is after the baby in order to perform the final familial sacrifice. Tommy heads out to find Loomis, who is back at the hospital with Wynn, where they learn Jamie was pregnant and very recently gave birth. Good news is Loomy already knows who has the baby. Danny is talking to the senile boarding house owner, Mrs. Blankenship, who is suddenly a lot less deaf, and she tells him how sick those Samhain parties were back in the day. Kara takes him back upstairs, but Mrs. Blankenship says Danny can hear the same voices young Michael Myers once did. Apparently she was babysitting Mike the night he killed his sister, and she remembers he spoke of a voice telling him to kill his family. Radio host Barry Sims arrives at the vague Halloween party festival protest thing, and drunk-ass John arrives home. The power cuts out and he heads to the flooded basement where the washing machine is still running. He finds the bloody sheets that Michael was so thoughtfully washing and runs right into him and his big knife. Mike's stab pushes him into the circuit breaker and John suffers a long, foamy electrocution until his fucking head explodes. Beth preaches about not fearing Halloween, Barry acts like a shithead, and when he realizes Tim lives in the Myers house, he decides to move the party there. Barry yells at an employee as he searches the parking lot for his van, but looks like you hopped in the wrong one, Barry. Rest in peace, you awful, unnecessary character. I guess he moved the plot forward though, as Tim and Beth arrive home. Tim is freaked out as he also didn't know Michael lived here, and she decides to distract in the most effective way possible. It's not like Barry will interrupt, as Michael has somehow turned him into a festive Halloween decoration without a single person noticing. Oh hey Loomis, thanks for joining the party. Tim goes to shower after some candlelit coitus and Michael hands him a towel to dry off. But the chivalry doesn't last long as Mikey slits Tim's throat. Kara has noticed the lights on at their house and calls, and she tells Beth to grab Tim and get the fuck out. Oh, here comes Michael, who stabs Beth a bunch of times in the back to kill her. At the same time, Danny starts hearing those pesky voices and heads over to the Myers house. Kara quickly follows and arms herself with a fire poker as she heads upstairs, where she finds the bodies of Tim and Beth. Then she finds Danny, and she finds Michael. Michael begins a slow chase, during which Deborah's body flies down from somewhere, and Kara actually gets the best of Michael, tripping him from the shadows. She crosses over unconscious Mike to grab Danny, but of course he grabs her. She whacks him away and they run to Tommy's just as he and Loomis arrive and realize baby Steven is missing. They let them inside just in time and Tommy asks Loomis who else knew about the baby. There was only one other person, but it turns out he's already here. That's right, the man in black is Dr. Wynn. Some culty boys grab Loomy and Tommy and Kara finds the baby with Mrs. Blankenship, who is also a cult member. Kara super yeets herself out the window, mimicking Michael in the original. Sometime later, Tommy and Loomis search for Kara under weird circumstances. What the fuck? How long have y'all been asleep for? I have so many questions and I know there's no good answers. Tommy wonders why they weren't killed, but Loomis knows where Wynn wants the finale to take place. Kara wakes up in a cell, and the arrival of our dynamic duo confirms this underground cult lair has been beneath Smith's Grove all this time. The boys head inside, and Loomy is determined to blow Wynn's brain out. He tells Tommy to wait outside, who wanders off to follow some screams, and he confronts his former colleague. Wynn says Michael is filled with pure, sweet evil, and the death of Jamie's baby is going to be the dawn of a new age, apparently. He wants Loomis to join him in his reign of evil, but then a henchman knocks him out. Tommy heads into maximum security where he meets this deranged woman with a gut wound. She says he has returned and asks Tommy how it feels to be damned before dropping dead. I guess I've seen worse ways to pad the runtime. Tommy finds Kara and starts breaking her door down, but he gets spotted by Michael and does a weird little twitch. He breaks her out just in time to avoid the clutches of slow-ass Michael. He does get a hold of Kara a bit later, but Tommy gives Mike a chest full of buckshot and they continue. They happen upon Wynn and a bunch of cult members discussing science mumbo-jumbo and watch as they prep for some kind of surgery that I assume will kill this baby. Who the fuck knows though? Michael sure doesn't, and he don't tolerate things he don't understand, so he grabs a surgical machete and literally just slaughters all of the cult doctors, I assume including Wynn, in crappy super stroby close-ups for no discernible reason. Tommy and Kara grab Danny and baby Steve and rush through the lair with a fleeing doctor and Michael right behind. They lock a gate behind them, but Michael just uses the doctor's face as a battering ram to get through. He chases them through the sanitarium until they end up in this full moon looking lab, complete with Nickelodeon slime and papier-mâché fetuses. What does it mean? Absolutely nothing. Michael punches his way inside and Tommy emerges with baby Steven, telling him he's won. But Tommy isn't just giving up the infant, and he injects Michael with a bunch of generic green gloop. Mike throws Tommy aside, but Kara starts going ham on him with a pipe. Michael gets the upper hand though and starts choking Kara until the cries of Danny get his attention. Tommy swoops in with another shot of reagent and gives Michael an even worse pipe beatdown. Loomis is awake now and helps Kara, Danny, and Steven into an elevator. Tommy keeps beating Michael until he's oozing green and then he just confidently walks away, I guess. They all try to convince Loomis to leave with them, but he says he has some business to attend to. They drive off and the movie ends with Michael's mask on the floor as we hear Loomis scream as he's presumably killed by Michael. And that's the curse of Michael Myers. Damn, this movie is a hot mess. Like, it's actually a mess. There are so many jumps in the story that don't make any sense and nobody bothers to explain. The cult stuff is just so far out of left field, and while there is some entertainment value in that, it just takes away everything that once made Michael Myers so great. The whole premise of Michael was that evil could take any shape and it could appear anywhere for no real reason. And now there is a very specific reason Michael is evil, and it's very convoluted, and it just makes him way less scary. He's apparently been powerless to this curse this whole time, essentially making him a victim as well. Nobody wants that. But then he just slaughters all of the cult members that have been controlling him. What does that mean? Is he gonna keep going for baby Steven? Or if he's actually dead at the end, does that mean the human race is gonna deal with an onslaught of plights now? This is all a bit more fleshed out in the producer's cut, but in the theatrical cut, like, none of it makes any sense. It's also just never mentioned where Jamie's baby came from. It's basically spelled out in the producer's cut that Michael raped his niece, which is just a disgusting, awful plot point that should have never been made. It's not discussed at all in this movie, but there really isn't a logical explanation that doesn't include rape. The movie is just chocked full of stupid music, transitions, and sound effects. Please give me anything aside from this 90s rock. It just feels so out of place here. Basically, Curse is all style and no substance, but I actually don't mind some of its style. The bright colors and fast camera movements were a welcome change after watching 5 movies that are all basically filmed the exact same way. And Michael feels a bit more intimidating than he did in the last 2. He's just brute force in this movie, and it's a little excessive at some points, but it leads to some good kills. But the kills don't hold much weight in the movie because all of the characters just feel really boring. I felt bad for Deborah, but I don't know anything about her, Tim, or Beth, so it's hard to really feel anything when they died. Even Kara and Tommy just feel odd, like the movie has so much going on that there is no time to give anyone real character development. The only characters we really know are Jamie and Loomis, both of whom are killed off so disrespectfully. I understand the passing of Donald Pleasance forced them to write him out of the series kind of inconveniently, but Jamie's death is just handled so poorly. So, they gave us Jamie Lloyd in the past 2 movies, and she is arguably the best thing about the last 2 movies. We get to know her, and we get to really care about her character and get invested. You decide to enslave her, rape her, and then kill her in the first 20 minutes of this crappy movie? It's just gross, and it's just so disrespectful to the character. I get horror isn't supposed to be all sunshine and rainbows, but these awful things happening aren't used well and don't really add to the story. And Jamie's absence leaves a hole that no amount of Danny or the Man in Black can fill. I appreciate that Daniel Farrens had a lot of retconning he had to do to make all of this shit fit together, but this plot has so many holes. Why did there need to be a baby? Why couldn't Jamie just be the final sacrifice instead of forcing her to have a baby? Who knows? How would none of the Strodes have known what happened in this house given the whole town constantly talking about it? Who knows? I could go on and on nitpicking about things that don't make any sense in this movie, but I think I'll call it there. Curse is a jumbled mess, and it's the result of trying to answer a bunch of ham-fisted unanswered questions and every person involved in making the movie trying to seize control of it. The producers were working against each other and ultimately created pieces of a bunch of different movies that were forcibly smashed together, and it formed this bastard of a movie. I appreciate that this is probably the most ambitious Halloween movie since part 3, but that ambition is misplaced in a story with so many bad aspects. It's at least pretty fast paced and has some decent deaths, but it's not a movie I'm gonna seek out anytime soon. Well, that's about it. We're still in the crappy section of the Halloween movies, so next week we'll be watching Halloween Resurrection. Thank you all for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and this has been Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Halloween 6. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with my weekly horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks, y'all.